So you created your company and now you want to design your own logo. Or perhaps a client has reached out to you to design their logo for them. It can seem daunting to take on this task, but I want to break it down for you in some simple steps that you can follow to start producing great looking logos. Let's get started. Logo design is really an art form. If you've ever had the pleasure of working with a professional logo designer, you know how valuable their services can be. There's a ton of nuance, there's a lot of hidden layers within there, there's pixel perfection, everything to represent your brand. However, sometimes because of speed or budget or trust or any number of other issues, you can't quite work with a logo designer. And again, perhaps your clients are reaching out to you, could you simply design my logo? I'd like to get things started. You might be a bit daunted by it, but I want to break it down for you for some repeatable steps that you can do every time to start to get the ideas flowing, to start producing some great looking logos. So what I'll lead you through today is first we're going to look at inspiration. So we're going to get some great ideas and be inspired by professional designers and their logos. Next, I'll show you how to easily choose a font or try a bunch of fonts to get the ideas flowing. Next, we'll work with the actual creation of an icon for your logo. Some common layouts that you can try out just rapid fire to see which one strikes you the best. And finally, we'll apply a little bit of color. So quick note, for today's work, I'm going to be using the free online design program, Figma. Now, all these steps that I'm talking about can absolutely be done in whatever program you have. If you want to do it in Canva, you can even do this inside of PowerPoint or Google Slides by outputting the final slide as an image. Adobe XD, Illustrator if you're that far along, but Figma is a really great one, completely free. You can use it online in the browser like I am today, or you can also download it for free and have total access to it. If you'd like me to do a Figma video in the future, just toss me a note or a letter. Would happy to get into it. But don't be daunted by this. It's not so much the program today, it's the steps and how to put it together. So first step, as I mentioned, inspiration. So no need to go this alone. No need to try to come up with it just out of the ether. You can absolutely get some ideas from professional designers out there. One of my favorite sites to go to, Dribbble, that's spelled with 3bs.com. And if you go and search for logo, you'll see some incredible, beautiful work done by other designers to see what type of feel you might like to go for. So we got this cool looking one with a K with a lightning bolt right inside of it. We have this nice loop that kind of makes a bit of a plus sign right there, so that's fairly clever. Some lightning bolts, got this nice A sitting on top of some nice lettering besides. So you can get a sense of lemon pie, kind of like this one. Sharp, simple, definitely something we could kind of attain. So don't go it alone. Get out there and find inspiration, copy a bunch of them, and create an inspiration board. If you're doing it for a client, this is especially advantageous because you can, instead of shooting darts into the dark, you can give them a series of 10 logos. Hey, which of these speaks to you? And then you have a wheelhouse of understanding. They want something decorative and very flowing. They want something clever and with sharp, dark lines. You can get a sense of it. This is actually very useful to do if it's for clients. But even for yourself, be inspired, find a bunch, see what ones you like. Now the next step of it that I suggest you do is finding a font. So if you are going to have lettering or the name of your company in the logo, this is a very useful step. So Google Fonts, besides the benefit of having a completely free fonts that you can use for your work and for your logo, what I really like about the site itself, fonts.google.com, is up at the top here, you'll see the demonstration text. You can replace that with whatever text you want, the name of your company. In this case, let's produce a logo for a company called Design Help. And immediately what it'll show you is how those letters look like across all the available fonts. You can filter them, for instance, if you want to know how it looks like in serif or sans serif. But as soon as you type it out, now you're scrolling and you're finding beautiful examples of what the letters would look like in various fonts. And this is very much an emotional part. Take 10, 20, 30, however many you want, and then take that font, either install it, or if you're using Figma in this case, many of these fonts are available, and then apply it to the text so you have a board to kind of choose across. And then now, by comparison, you can see which one strikes you, which one do you like, which one speaks to you and your brand, and which one would you want to go for. So fonts.google.com, type out your name, and then see what it would look like. If you want to have a bit of a lesson on how to best use fonts, what the different ones mean, some of the emotions attached to it, I have a completely free video you can check out. I'll link it in the description. Fairly quick, but explains some of the nuances of fonts and how you can apply them better in your work. But let's say you've gone through, and in this case we've chosen 5 different fonts that kind of spoke to us that we liked. So play around with them, play with the height and the size and everything else, and finally we'll choose one that we like. Now looking at the selection here, I tend to like this condensed one here, made a little bit bolder. I think that one looks nice, so I think we're going to proceed with this guy here. I will put him aside over here to bring along with us as we go. Now for the icon of the font, we'll discuss in a minute how to find an actual image, a little illustration that we can use. There's some really great resources online. But to start with, one of the tactics or tricks I like to use is actually just use the letters themselves. So what do I mean by that? So if we take the D here, and let's take the H here, immediately you can see how applying these two together with nothing else starts to make it look like an icon. Like it becomes iconic in its own little way. And then you apply it with the font itself, and perhaps we just, to make it a little bit different, let's change the color just to show you quickly. Or one of the colors we'll get below. So it starts to speak, it starts to work like that. Let's get rid of this for now. Let's also try it with, okay, so here we actually have the same font, but just in the lighter. So this is light, this is the bold version of it. We can also do lowercase, we have the D and the H. And what's kind of really nice about this one is you can see these two lines match up. So in fact, if we take it, and you'll see this is something I really recommend you do, where when you're playing with it, take something that's kind of close and then duplicate it, and then do something to it, and then duplicate it. And then, if you want to keep playing and just seeing the various options. Oh, that was an act I hadn't even thought of one before. I kind of like that actually. But with these design programs, and again, it works with whatever program you're doing, just don't erase or don't worry about finishing one particular piece. If it's kind of good, leave it, duplicate it, try something else. Duplicate it, try something else. You'll get on a roll, your creativity will flow. You can see here how just taking the letters of your company or your client's company can produce some interesting visuals, right? Now then, to that, you could start to apply some shapes. So what does it look like? If we add let's say square, let's put that behind. Okay, that's kind of interesting. Almost looks like a bit of a fashion brand. What does it look like if we take that same one? And once you learn all these tricks, again, this is any company or any logo that you're building for this, you kind of just apply these same simple steps, okay, I'm going to put a box behind it. I'm going to take the first 2 letters. In many ways, you're just getting a bunch of ideas out of the way so that you can do some more interesting exploration. So let's take these 2 and tell you what, let's make it white so it's kind of cutting through it. You might have seen that in some logos. So there we go. So it's kind of cutting off. That's an interesting look. Right? So that you can see how you can just take the 2 letters, however many letters you have within it, and start to build an icon of itself. Icon from nothing else but the letters. Tell you what, just to kind of finish that thought, let's get that in there. Right? And it starts to work. Now if you do want an actual graphic, a piece of iconography, the question starts to come up, okay, what icon would I use? How do I represent what I want to show? Like what image will represent it for me? One of my tricks for this is if you just go into Google and search for the term itself, if it's descriptive enough. If not, you could think about graphic design or helping people, helping others. You can just search for the term itself of the company or adjacent terms, and then go over to images, and presented to you will be a bunch of images that have been tagged near or adjacent to your words. So what do we get for design help? We have somebody lifting with a ladder. We have the light bulbs, which is a great kind of thinking of that. We have the comfortable home. We have a mouth. We have it's not necessarily help adjacent, but it is kind of a paintbrush and art tools with an eye. You can imagine that, or some other signifier of help. We have hands raising up, like kind of holding hands. We have hands carefully cradling two items here, so that's kind of interesting. And then inside there, maybe you can put your letters or just have the hands itself around the logo. So it's helping, it's holding up, it's assisting. So you can see again, this isn't about we're going to copy it and that becomes our logo. It's about, oh, hands. I hadn't thought about hands. Okay, I'm going to find a hand icon, bring it in, and see what I can do to apply it. Lots of interesting ideas there. So that's Google search. Go over to images and get some iconography ideas. You have some ideas now. Where do we find the icons themselves? Well, if you don't want to create it yourself, which can be kind of a daunting task, again, we're going to go back to some free resources. Firstly, we'll find some on Dribbble. If you go to dribbble.com and type free icons, you will find tons upon tons of free icons that you can use. So you'll go through and you'll see anything that you might like, download it, upload it, and be able to use it inside your logo. You want to make really carefully sure that they are free to use. Some will want to be attributed, some will want a small payment or something. So you want to make sure that somewhere listed and where you can download it, it's completely free, because you don't want to run afoul of that. So for instance, with here, what I think is kind of interesting is I don't mind the lifesaver here. So, you know, you're throwing somebody a lifesaver for design. That's kind of an interesting one. So that's something we could play with. Same too, if you don't find anything on Dribbble, behance.net. It's another designer showcase site. And again, it's another place where designers have put up just a ton of free, beautiful icons that you can consider. So really kind of like this design set here. This like one with the globe, not exactly working for ours, but that's really beautiful. Same with the star, kind of like a little bit of color to it. You can see how you might be able to apply this, make it interesting. Lastly, if you are using Figma, and as well I'll show you a different way to use it, but a site called Tablericons.com, a 937 beautiful line art logos that you can use, entirely searchable. So if we search for instance, help, and there we go, there's the very buoy that we talked about from before. Now, let me show you a trick. So the way this site works is when you click on it, you can't really download it. It's an SVG, which is actually a code format that sites know how to render. So you can't save it if you want to use it, but I'll show you one way to do so. So if you click on it, it's copied. So the text of this code icon is now on my clipboard. Figma, if you end up using Figma, actually accepts it. So if you press, if you paste it, here it is. And what's kind of nice about this format is it allows you to change the colors of it immediately. So it is a design object within the platform. So if we click into it actually too, you can come in here, change the thickness of the lines, all sorts of great stuff. Now, if you aren't using Figma and whatever program you're using doesn't let you paste SVGs in, let me show you really quick how to do that. So you just click it. So now it's copied to my clipboard. Open up Notepad or text editor if you're on a Mac and paste. You can see here's what that looks like. Save it and save it wherever you want to go. So we'll go with lifesaver dot, this is the important part, SVG. And we'll save it, and there we have it. If I bring up my documents here, you'll see I'll be able to drag it, and here it is, ready for us to go SVG, and that'll be more available for some of the other programs. So a tiny tip about how to do for that. But we have this icon here, we can play around with it. You know, the other thing I had seen I'd like to try, bandage. I'd kind of like the idea of helping hand, repair. I want to play around with this concept a little bit there too. So now we have this iconography here, and you can just bring in a whole bunch and figure out which one is going to speak to your brand and speak to your idea. Let's thicken this up a little bit. It's hard to see. Now again, you'll see obviously I'm clicking around inside the design program. It might seem a bit daunting to you, but honestly, if you work a little bit with it, all becomes a little bit more apparent. So we've gone through and we've had some cool icon ideas with the letters themselves and even with the bandage. So I think I'd like to continue with the bandage. Let's see where we can get to. So next I want to talk about layout. So we have our font selected. We think it's a great looking font. We have a icon chosen. You can either go with the text or one that you found online from a great free site. How do we place it where does it go against the text? So let me actually change this all to, I believe it was condensed, open sans condensed, and bold. Just so we're working with the same one. So another thing to think just during these first exploration phases is that ultimately there's very few places a logo or an icon will exist. And what do I mean by that? Specifically, it's either on the left, it's a little bit bigger with the text doubled up. It is on the right, it's above, it's overlapping. You know, it's your common spaces. If you go back to your exercise here, you can see it's either, you know, in this case too, there's another idea. It's integrated. It's taking over a letter. So if you have a circle and then you have an O, you can replace it. But it's either on the left side, it's above here, like a desoft. There's, you know, just classic places where it can go. So again, just to, during this initial ideation phase, go through all the classics. There's no need to break the mold on every single thing. Let's see here. Make sure that's grouped for me. So let's do that. Let's quickly just put this in. I'm finding the one Band-Aid is a little bit light. So what I probably will do is want to double it up. So let's actually go back to, you've probably seen it too, where it's like two Band-Aids like on a scraped knee. I'd kind of prefer to play with that space instead. So I'm going to do that. Okay, as a quick aside, I just wanted to have the two Band-Aids over top of each other to provide some depth and make it a little bit square or take up a bit more space. So let's now put that in. I'll tell you what, I'll leave one Band-Aid in for the other options. So we can put it on the left and kind of make sure we size things appropriately so it sits nicely. Okay, that's fairly good. So now we need it big enough so it takes up the left side. Let's bring this text up a little bit. So I'm reducing the line height of it, another topic I discuss in that free design course, or the free font course. Now we have it on the right side. Let's take this one over here. See, there's not a lot of thinking that goes involved here. At this point, it's like, okay, let's just try it in sort of the classic, obvious ways, and then when we finish, we'll take a look and see which one we liked. So above. That's kind of cool, like how it groups together there. It might be interesting too if we had that lighter so it's even closer together, a little bit less big. It certainly looks interesting. And then for the ones where we're going to have it going over top, let's see, let's make sure I add a fill to it. Here we go. Let's just have it sitting on the edge as if we're bandaging up the D itself. And then very much the same idea, except we'll bandage up the P. And that might work a little bit better. And at this point too, don't feel like you have to go through every single step before you play around a little bit, because what I wouldn't mind seeing with this one is if it was capital letters, so it's able to better interact with that final P. There we go. That certainly makes it interesting. Let's get rid of that. And there we have it. So now when you step back, you can kind of see all of these ones. We haven't really done a lot of thinking. It's okay, the icon can exist on the left. It can be a bit bigger. It can be on the top or the right. It can intersect with the logo. We don't have a real example of a letter that the thing can overtake, but you know, you can imagine this is not going to work well, but I just want to show it. Let's say we want it to take over the E of help. Easier kind of way to do that is let's just go ahead and delete that. And we'll go H, oops, H, ELP. I said I don't think this is a good substitute. It's not very close to an E, but I did want to show how you could kind of simply just combine things and get it in there. Oops, no need for the E. If anything, it kind of looks more like design hulp, but you'll bear with me. There we have it, just as another final idea as well. So very quickly, it's just classic, it's standard, tell you what, I'm going to place it a bunch of places, see where it ends up. Now for our purposes, I tend to think kind of the very simple, very classic one here looks quite good. So let's take that one and finalize with a bit of colors. Now colors as well, I have an entire set of videos entirely for free. I'll link it in the description here too to discuss how to find colors, how to apply it, what's the best colors to use. If you already have a set of brand colors, you're kind of already good to go. So in this case here, it's deciding, okay, do you want to keep it sharp like that, only have the black and white version of it, or would you want to apply some colors? I tend to like to avoid flat black. I prefer to go something with all threes, for instance. Just to line up a little bit. It just makes it a little bit richer as opposed to an absolute dead black. But again, this is very much now your choice, and this is very much just a chance for you to play with whatever colors you do have. In my case, I previously had selected some greens, which I'll show you over on this side here. And let's see what we can do to apply it. So let's keep a black version. Tell you what, I'll put this one over here. We can work closer to the greens. So what would it look like if the words were kind of the darker green, and then the fill of this was sort of the lighter green? Do this here. What would it look like the lighter green? Okay, sort of interesting. Let's move that aside. Let's try another one. What if the logo was the very dark green and then the bullet points here were white? Or everything was white except for the fill. Let's try that. Again, you will be a little bit call it even encumbered at first if you do use a program like this and you're learning it, but it tends to be a good excuse to learn it, is to fight through the various parts of it. But again, you're working at some of this from, if you're using Canva, there's strokes and outlines for the various shapes, and that could work too. So that's one there. That looks good. And as I keep saying, copy it, try something different. So that's kind of a pretty version of that. I don't mind that at all. Now what if we make this just a black though? Like the dark. That's kind of a nice contrast between the white and that. So interesting. Let's go with, let's move that over. And what shall we do finally? You know what, I kind of like how this is looking. The last thing I think I'll try is making the back Band-Aid dark. Now this stuff comes kind of naturally to me because I've done, you know, as a professional designer for so many years, I'm used to kind of quickly doing things. As you look at more logos, as you look at more designs, this sort of stuff will become very obvious to you too. So it's kind of one of the good reasons to get started, because the more you do it, the better and more natural it gets. You know, I tend to like how that looks. I think that's kind of sharp, so I think I'd like to continue with that. The only other thing we'll do is, just for comparison, is let's take those two greens. I like how it's darker on the background because that alludes to depth. So something is clearly behind it, so it's a subtle way to add some depth. Let's add back a darker border, though not, let's go with the darker green as opposed to the full black. Select those dots. Let's select that same green here, and we'll do that for the back one as well. There we have it. Sort of a close, that's interesting. This will very much come down to your personal taste, to which one you prefer. I think I kind of like this. Yeah, this one feels a little bit nicer to me. You know, you want to play with some of the spacing and everything else, but that is certainly a way to go. And that's it. One last thing to consider here. Now this would be more in the layout thing as opposed to the, oops, see, you and I make mistakes with this program still. I think you consider this more like a layout thing, but let's, when I'm looking at this far away, like this one kind of strikes me, so I'm going to go with this guy. Copy it. Copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste, keep trying different things. The last thing to consider too, this sort of falls between fonts and layouts, is to play with the text itself. And what I mean by that is, for instance, if you wanted to make it all uppercase, so design help, but then adjust the sizing of the various fonts. So go with that, and then bring that way down. Right, that's 90 looks all right. Do the same one there. Sort of interesting. Yep, I find that a bit more refined. It seems to sit better with that. I don't mind it. Let's just take the same one. Let's go with, let's bring down the lowercase version of it. Again, kind of interesting. It makes it feel a bit more purposeful with the letters. We could try, if we make the whole thing lighter, I think the difference might be a little bit too strong, but I'd be kind of curious to see what happens. If we pull this out, just the letters. Okay, that's kind of interesting. Right, so you can play with that too, as far as the size of the letters, locations of the letters, and where does that go. So just quick look, when I'm looking at all of these, the ones that speaks to me the most would be this one on the top right, with the slightly, where the D and the H are made slightly bigger to kind of make it more pronounced. So let's bring this into our, let's call it a little Hall of Fame here, and there is our logo. Not bad. You done creating entirely free software, free resources, and nothing overly spectacular. We just followed a simple step, common layouts, free fonts online, trying it all out, experimenting, and we arrive here. As a quick review, we started out by looking for some inspiration. Don't go it alone. Head over to Dribbble or Behance and find a bunch of beautiful designs you might want to look like. And it's okay as well to send those to clients and say, which of these logos speaks to you? You know, do you like this sort of feel with the strong shapes inside of dark objects, or do you like it flowing? Do you want it above or the left? To see what they like. It'll help guide you and put you into a certain space when you're starting to produce the design. Next, for the actual fonts, head over to Google Fonts, fonts.google.com, type in the name of your company or whatever you need the icon for, and see what the various fonts look like. So choose like 2, 5, 10, however many you like, get a whole fleet of it, and then see which one speaks to you. Which one do you like? For the icon itself, consider taking the first letters or however many letters of your name, so design help in our case, DH, and play with those. Mash them together, change the colors, skew them, uppercase, lowercase. You might be able to get away with creating a really strong mark with just the letters, commonly done within there. If that doesn't quite work, if you still want an icon itself, head over to, again, Dribbble or Behance, and search for free icons. Within there, you'll see a bunch of designers have put up some amazing looking graphics that you can download and use for your own work. Not sure what type of icon to use? Go to google.com, search for the term of your company itself or something adjacent, and then go to images. You'll find a bunch of ideas that you can use. In our case, it was light bulbs and hands and art pieces. It will assist you in thinking about what type of iconography you can use. From there, we did some layouts just to get ideas out of our head. There's no need to overthink this one. This is very much put the icon or the letters that you have, put it to the left, put it to the right, make it a little bit bigger, put it on top, have it overlap, and have it perhaps take over a letter within it if that works for it. And if it's obvious enough, again, we're looking at design help here again. So just apply some classic layouts. We chose a font, we have an icon. Just move it around and see which fits. And at this point now, something should really start to speak to you or be giving you ideas. After that, we're simply going to be applying colors to the lines, to the interiors, to the fill, to the text itself, to just letters within the text. Apply it across, see what happens. Maybe play with the fonts themselves as far as keeping the capital letters bigger, lowercase smaller, raising and making everything capital. Last little bit of playing until finally you arrive at a logo that is all yourself. So simple steps, free resources, a little bit of creativity, and you are creating, designing beautiful logos. Hope that helps. If you have any ideas or requests for what to cover next or how I might assist, would love to hear from you. Comment, find me at just enough dot design, and cheers to your great looking work.